Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Authorities in Bergen County, New Jersey say that a string of terrifying misfortune has continued for one local business owner after she was nearly killed in her pet store just 2 weeks after she was also the victim of a devastating robbery. This week's incident began shortly before 6 p.m. on February 17th, when police received a 911 call from the business, which is called Birds by Joe 2. They were informed that the store's owner, Katerina Rukavishnikova, had just been the victim of a violent attack. She had been shot in the face with a crossbow. When officers arrived at the scene, Katerina was rushed to a hospital. Despite her serious injuries, thankfully she survived, and she was actually back at work by the following day. That same afternoon, police were able to arrest the suspected perpetrator, 53-year-old Raymond Carey. It's currently unclear why Carey allegedly did what he did. According to Katerina, he is a repeat customer of her bird shop. On the evening in question, she said he walked in and shot her without any kind of warning. While Carey is now facing first-degree attempted murder charges in connection with the case, police say they are still working on the last incident to take place at the pet store as well. Just a couple weeks ago, on January 23rd, Katerina's business was the target of a separate, unconnected robbery. During that crime, a man, later identified as 24-year-old Onyx Calderon, walked into the store and began asking questions about a baby African gray parrot that was for sale. At first, it seemed like Calderon was interested in purchasing the bird. However, moments later, he allegedly snatched the whole cage with the animal inside and took off. The parrot is reportedly worth $7,000. Thankfully, the bird was recovered unharmed, though police say that they are still searching for Calderon. A warrant was put out for his arrest, but at the time of this recording, he remains on the run. Officials in Los Angeles County, California announced a reward in the case of a murdered Chinese exchange student this week, saying that they are offering $20,000 for information leading to the arrest of the college girl's killer. The whole thing began shortly before 7 p.m. on February 4th, when police received a 911 call from the roommate of 23-year-old Muhan Zhuang. Muhan, who also went by the name Emily King, had been found unresponsive inside of her condo in the Santa Clarita community of Newhall. When emergency responders arrived at the scene, sadly, there was nothing they could do. Muhan was pronounced dead a short time later, having suffered, quote, several injuries to her upper body. According to police, Muhan's roommate was cooperative from the beginning of their investigation and was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Instead, attention quickly turned to a mysterious man who the 23-year-old had been seen with the night before her body was found. Authorities say that they were able to obtain surveillance footage showing Muhan and the, quote, male companion arriving at her condo together on the evening of February 3rd. After that, the man was seen leaving alone the following afternoon. How he left was the most suspicious part by far, though. Police say he was seen climbing out of Muhan's second-story bedroom window. So far, this person's identity remains a mystery. He has been described only as a male believed to be of Asian descent who was last seen wearing all-black clothing. It's suspected that Muhan and the man knew each other, and police have stated that they do not think this was a random act of violence. At the time of her murder, Muhan was in the senior year of her undergraduate degree at the California Institute of Arts. She was a Chinese national who had been in the U.S. for approximately 3.5 years on a student visa. Anyone with information about the case or the unidentified male suspect is asked to please contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. Representatives from the New York State Police say that a wanted fugitive is successfully in custody this week, more than 3 months after he fled Pennsylvania when he became the prime suspect in the brutal murder of his ex-girlfriend. The case began back on November 7th, 2024, when the body of 29-year-old Melody Rivera was found under awful circumstances. The young woman, who had been missing for about a week, had been bludgeoned to death and buried in a shallow grave at a park in Philadelphia's Fox Chase neighborhood. Almost immediately, Melody's ex-boyfriend, 29-year-old Giovanni Otero, emerged as a possible person of interest. Not only does Otero apparently have a lengthy criminal record dating back to the age of 12, but police learned that he was one of the last confirmed people to have seen Melody before her disappearance. At the time, Otero was on parole, so he should have been easy to find. But right after he became a suspect in the murder case, he stopped reporting to his parole officer and fled the state. A warrant for Otero's arrest was put out at the end of November, but unfortunately authorities were not able to locate him. him. A combined reward of $25,000 was put out between Philadelphia police and the U.S. Marshal Service. But still, for 3 months, not much of anything happened. That changed on February 15th, when state troopers in New York just happened to spot a vehicle that had been reported stolen out of Virginia. When they attempted to pull the male driver over, he initially slowed down before attempting to speed off. While this resulted in a chase, it didn't last very long. The driver crashed about a mile down the road and wasn't much more successful when he tried to continue his escape on foot. After being caught, the driver gave police several fake IDs, though fingerprints revealed his true identity. After learning that his name was in fact Giovanni Otero, they discovered that he was wanted back in Philadelphia. On top of the murder and abandonment of a corpse charges Otero is facing back in Pennsylvania, police say that he has been slapped with a number of additional offenses in New York. Among them are possessing stolen property, false impersonation, and fleeing from police. He is expected to be returned to Pennsylvania in the coming days. Authorities in Miami-Dade County, Florida, say that a 50-year-old local man is facing charges this week following a horrifying incident earlier this month in which he allegedly used an explosive device on a vehicle while his wife was inside. The whole thing unfolded shortly before 6 a.m. on February 1st, when police were contacted by terrified residents in the city of Hialeah Gardens. 911 callers stated that they had just heard incredibly loud noises near Northwest 114th Terrace and 88th Court, and when they looked outside, they saw a vehicle on fire in the middle of the street. When emergency responders arrived at the scene, they found the car completely engulfed in flames. Though firefighters immediately got to work bringing the blaze under control, it soon became clear that they had a very serious situation on their hands. Inside the scorched vehicle were the remains of a female passenger. Her body had been burned beyond recognition. Thanks to additional details from witnesses, investigators were able to piece together what had happened. They learned the vehicle in question belonged to a husband and wife who lived at a home right next to the crime scene. The witnesses explained that as the couple were leaving the house together in the car that morning, they appeared to get in some kind of argument. The vehicle came to a stop and the wife tried to get out. However, she was stopped by her husband, 50-year-old Noel Ruiz Mestre, who managed to get out first. Seconds later, there was a loud bang and the vehicle erupted into flames. The actual explosion was filmed by a home security camera across the street, which captured the moment the vehicle ignited. Mestre was ultimately arrested a short distance from the scene with burns as well as stabbing injuries. Police now allege that after setting off the improvised explosive device that killed his wife, he went back into his residence, changed his clothes, and stabbed himself in the stomach. The 50-year-old was taken to the hospital to be treated for his injuries, but this week it was announced that he has now been charged with second-degree murder and arson. The motive behind the chilling crime is still under investigation, and at the time of this recording, the name of the female victim has not been released. Authorities in Houston, Texas say that a 23-year-old woman was charged with murder last week, days after she allegedly shot and killed her boyfriend because of texts she found on his cell phone. The whole thing began on the morning of February 9th, when police were called to the 10,700 block of Bearley Lane with reports of gunshots. Officers arrived to find the body of 28-year-old Giovanni Montague, who had been fatally shot multiple times close to the apartment where he lived with his mother. Thanks to surveillance footage, police were able to identify a suspect, Giovanni's 23-year-old girlfriend, Tatiana Evans. Evans's car was caught on camera leaving the apartment complex. At the same time, witnesses called 911 about the gunshots. Investigators now allege that Evans shot Giovanni during the middle of a confrontation over text messages from another woman on his cell phone. According to reports earlier that day, Giovanni had called Evans, telling her that he forgot his phone in her car. That's when she apparently discovered the messages and decided to confront him. During questioning after her arrest on February 11th, Evans allegedly confessed to the killing, saying she had shot Giovanni 5 or 6 times. However, she later changed her story, claiming he had grabbed at her and her jacket during an argument. Giovanni's mother told police that this was not the first violent incident that had happened between Evans and her son. She described their relationship as volatile and said that Evans had previously physically injured Giovanni. At one point in December of last year, he reportedly filed a police report because of threats the 23-year-old made. However, it's unclear if charges were ever brought as a result. At the time of this recording, Evans remains in custody on murder charges. Authorities in Pennsylvania say that a 21-year-old Michigan man is facing a number of serious charges this week following an absolutely terrifying and unhinged arson attack. One that he allegedly carried out because a man who lived at the targeted residence was in an online relationship with his ex-girlfriend. The whole thing began shortly after 5 a.m. on February 10th when a woman named Stacy Zelensky awoke to strange noises inside of her house in Bensalem Township. She went to investigate, only to realize to her horror that the entire place was engulfed in flames. Thanks to Stacy's quick and decisive actions, miraculously, her husband, their 2 children, and her parents, who were all inside at the time, managed to make it out alive. It was an extremely close call, though. According to reports, several of the family members had to be hospitalized and only got to safety after jumping out of second-story windows at the property. Even so, not everyone made it out. The family's 2 dogs, Trey and Jet, could not be reached in time. The fire also completely destroyed the house, causing the family to lose everything they owned. Very quickly, things got even more awful when emergency responders began to realize that the terrible fire was no accident. There was evidence that an accelerant had been used and that the fire had been deliberately started. This was confirmed when surveillance footage from a house across the street was examined, showing a man in a black vehicle pulling up at the crime scene. The man had gotten out of the car and walked to the back of the Zelensky house, where he stayed for approximately 10 minutes. He could be seen running back and speeding away in his vehicle less than a minute before the first visible flames at the residence broke out. With this, authorities were able to identify the man as 21-year-old Harrison Jones. Jones is now accused of driving more than 700 miles from his home in Rockford, Michigan, to carry out the arson attack before immediately turning around and driving back. When Jones was tracked down and arrested 2 days after the incident, police say he had burns on his arm. While no official motive behind the crime has been confirmed by police at this time, it has been widely reported that Jones was jealous of a man who lived at the Zelensky residence. According to several news sources, Jones was jealous of the man because he had been in an online relationship with his ex-girlfriend since 2023. It's further stated that Jones was supposed to drive the ex in question to meet the man in the near future. As if all of this isn't bad enough, apparently the Zelensky family was already dealing with their fair share of challenges before all of this. According to a GoFundMe set up for the family, Stacy has spent the last 3 years in a long, hard battle with cancer. The post reads in part, quote, "They are a gracious, loving, caring, generous family, and nobody deserves to go through everything that they have been through. It has been hard enough dealing with cancer and Stacy almost losing her life multiple times to now losing their beloved dogs, precious memories, and everything they own and have worked so hard for over the years." As for Jones, he has now been charged with 6 counts of attempted homicide, arson, and other related crimes. He is currently awaiting extradition back to Pennsylvania. Authorities in Louisville, Kentucky say that they are investigating the aftermath of an awful act of violence this week after 3 people were killed in a shooting at a local Department of Motor Vehicles office. The incident unfolded at around noon on February 21st at the Driver Licensing Regional Office on the 6200 block of Willismore Drive. Police rushed to the scene after they began receiving 911 calls about shots fired there. When officers arrived, they found 3 victims outside in the office's parking lot. A man, later identified as 18-year-old Leslie Harbin Jr., was pronounced dead at the scene from multiple gunshot wounds, while 2 women, 29-year-old Raisa Valdez and 33-year-old Antoinette Chillers, were suffering from similar critical injuries. The women were taken to a local hospital, but sadly, both of them later died as well. Terrified witnesses told investigators that the driver's license office was extremely busy that day, and the line to be helped extended out the door. Several had even gone to their cars to wait for things to start moving, when suddenly they heard loud bangs that they recognized as gunshots. Some people ran inside the office to try and seek shelter, while others scrambled out towards vehicles and elsewhere in the parking lot to try and find safety. They said at least 2 masked men were responsible for the shooting, but they had no idea what had really happened or why. Indeed, it appears police themselves are still trying to figure this out. At the time of this recording, very little additional information has been released about the situation, though authorities have said they do not believe that there was any broader threat to the public. The only other detail we know is that the perpetrators allegedly shot Leslie Harbin several times, even after he was already on the ground. This could indicate that the attack was targeted, though again, currently, we just really don't know. It's also unclear how the other 2 victims were related to the situation, or if any of them were connected. So far, no suspects have been identified and no arrests have been made. The disturbing situation is still under investigation. Authorities in the city of York, Pennsylvania say that they are piecing together the events of an awful tragedy this week, following a terrifying hostage situation at a local hospital that left a police officer dead and several other people injured. The incident unfolded shortly after 10:30 a.m. on February 22nd at UPMC Memorial Hospital. It began when a man, later identified as 49-year-old Diogenes Archangel Ortiz, walked into the facility's intensive care unit. He was armed with a handgun and carrying a bag of zip ties. And according to witnesses, upon entering, he headed straight for a group of hospital staff. Moments later, he allegedly opened fire, hitting a doctor, a nurse, and a custodian, all of whom he then took hostage. Security personnel at the hospital immediately attempted to intervene after hearing the gunshots. However, they were apparently forced to pull back when Ortiz shot at them as well. At the same time, police departments from around the area began responding to the scene, leading to a tense and terrifying standoff. Authorities say that after arriving, they attempted to negotiate with Ortiz, but his actions soon made that impossible. When he emerged from the ICU holding one of the hostages at gunpoint with her hands bound, they felt that they were left with no other recourse. They opened fire, leading to a shootout. In the resulting gunfire, Ortiz was killed, but sadly, so was a West York Borough police officer, 30-year-old Andrew Dewart. At least 2 other officers were also shot. It's unclear exactly where the female hostage was during the shooting, but it said that she, as well as all of the other victims, survived. The 3 hostages and the 2 injured officers were all treated for their injuries and are said to be in stable condition. As for why all of this happened, so far no motive has been officially confirmed, though there are many reports that state that this was not Ortiz's first time at the hospital's ICU. According to these sources, the 49-year-old had been there just days earlier while a family member was receiving treatment. That family member ultimately passed away, and it's been speculated that Ortiz was angry over what had happened. A hospital official told reporters that Ortiz appeared to blame doctors and hospital staff for the death, even though his loved one had a terminal illness. It's further stated that one of the doctors targeted during the incident was part of the medical team that had treated Ortiz's family member. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still looking into all of this and are piecing together the details of the terrible tragedy. At the same time, the loved ones of Andrew Dewart, as well as his fellow officers, are paying tribute to his life of service. According to reports, the 30-year-old joined the West York Borough Police Department in 2022 after 5 years working as an officer in Denver, Colorado. During his time with the department, he won a Hero Award from Mothers Against Drunk Driving for his work in impaired driving enforcement in the state of Colorado. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.